Okay. You're all being so kind to each other, so the House will come to order. The Pledge of Allegiance this morning will be led by Onyx, I'm sorry, I can't read. Onyx, Oaks, Amana, Fard, and Amina. Sorry, and Genesis Triplet. Got that one right.
Please join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Scroll, please take the roll.
Representatives Becker, Buck, Buckner, Conti, Quorum, Court, Del Grosso, Dorr, Duran, Everett, Exum, Fields, Fisher, Foote, Garcia, Gardner, Giroux, Janal, Hamner, Holbert, Hollinghorst, Humphrey, Joshi, Kagan, Krafttharp, Labuda, Landgraf, Lawrence, Lebsock, Lee, May, McCann is excused, McLaughlin, McNulty, Melton, Mitch Bush, Moreno, Murray, Navarro, Nordberg, Pabon, Peniston, Pedersen,
Representative Wilson.
Primavera, Priola, Rankin, Rosenthal, Ryden, Sane, Representative Sane, Salazar,
Yeah, same to you.
Schaefer, Representative Schaefer, absent. Scott, Representative Scott, absent. Singer, Sonnenberg, Representative Sonnenberg. Stevens is excused. Swam.
Hey, Corey, do you want a big hug from me?
Zavo. Tyler. Representative Scott is present? Yes. Vigil. Waller. Williams. Wilson. Wright. Young. Speaker Fairney.
Looking for Schaefer.
Otherwise. realize it's 62 to 1.
With 62 members present, 2 excused, 1 absent, a quorum is present. Representative Salazar for the last time this week.
Last time this week. So we did Gregorian chant. We did The Lion Sleeps Tonight. We did it in Spanish. How about a little James Brown this morning? Yeah? Hey! Mr. Speaker, I move the reading of the Journal of March 20th, 2014, be dispensed with, and that'll be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Woo! Living in America. Woo!
Too hot. He's too hot.
You guys have way too much time on your hands. You've kind of heard the motion, and I really don't want to vote on it, but we have to because it actually is a proper motion. You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. God help us. It's going to be a long day. All those opposed, no. Oh my God, you actually won the motion. The motion is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the Business, Labor, Economic Workforce Development Committee, for your planning purposes, Tuesday will be Telecom Day. We have 5 bills to hear. We will start upon adjournment. We will break for lunch, and we won't stop until we get all 5 bills passed. So get ready for Telecom Day and have a great weekend. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am not. I just said prepare for Telecom Day.
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to welcome the members of the Clear Creek County Veterans Coalition who are joining us today. Thank you for being here, and thanks for your service.
Representative Mitch Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is Friday, and it's time for the ski report. There was snow during the week. It's been clear last night, and it's going to snow on Saturday. And in Steamboat, home of the greatest tree skiing in the world, and a Western family-friendly town, it's going to be 4 inches. In Vail, like nowhere on earth, it's going to be 5. And Beaver Creek, home of the Birds of Prey downhill course, it's going to be 5. So have a good one.
Representative Hamner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's always tough to follow Representative Mitch Bush on the ski report, and I know Representative Wilson is going to tell us about how great Monarch Ski Area is. But let me just tell you, Keystone is fabulous for family skiing just as well. Just a quick drive on I-70 to Summit County. Don't forget about Copper Mountain, Breckenridge, Ski Cooper, Aspen, and Crested Butte. All fabulous places, incredible base amounts of snow. Oh, now we got everyone coming down. Okay, but I think I have the claim to fame with the greatest number of ski resorts in my House District, yay, House District 61.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Hamner. Quick drive on I-70. There's something that doesn't fit with that. I just want to put out a challenge to my colleagues from the other ski areas. My good friend, 2 weekends ago, went to Monarch, skied half a day, paid $29 for the ski pass, and made 14 runs. Can you match that?
Any more on the ski report? Representative Swam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will just simply say, in my experience, a quick drive on I-70 is about like an oxymoron, but that's not my point. Members, I just want to remind you, some folks here represent the Cherry Creek School District, and they're having their legislative day down here today. I know they're having lunch across the street at the Baptist Church. They're going to be around the Capitol today. Obviously, a great school system, and a number of us represent that part of the state. So I would encourage you to make a connection with those folks and have a good discussion with them today. So thank you very much.
Representative Primavera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to invite everyone to ski Broomfield. Not a lot of snow, but, you know. I have the honor of introducing a student here today. Her name is Sharon Schultz. She's a doctoral student at Regis University in the clinical healthcare program, and she's standing in the back corner, and she's actually Representative Szabo's constituent. So if you could welcome her here today.
Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While we're talking about snow, we've got to talk about my district has some of the greatest ski areas in the country, including Wolf Creek is served by the people who live in my district, even though it's in Mineral County. Of course, we have Durango Mountain Resort in Purgatory. We also have in Durango downtown, we have a ski area known as Chapman Hill, which is a great place to take your kids to learn how to ski. They have night passes. It costs about $10 a year to utilize this municipal facility. And finally, of course, we have Silverton Mountain in my district, which is the most extreme snow, most extreme, steepest, most difficult mountain in North America. So if you really want to find out if you're a serious skier, go to Silverton Mountain.
Representative Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I need to be excused at 11 this morning. I spoke with the Minority Leader and Majority Leader.
Representative Priola will be excused as requested. Representative Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just as a reminder, at 12 o'clock today is grand entry at the Denver March Powwow at the Denver Coliseum, and it goes all weekend long. Go grab yourself some fry bread and some Wojampi and enjoy the dancing. Thank you.
Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to invite every one of you to come to Fountain this weekend. If you want to do absolutely nothing, that is the place to be, because there's absolutely nothing to do.
Representative LaPuta.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the last time I'll be making this announcement because the meeting is today. The Legislative Oversight Committee for the continuing examination of the treatment of persons with mental illness who are involved in our criminal and juvenile justice systems. Today, 1:30 p.m., room 112, and members of the committee, you should have received by email both the agenda and the reports that we're going to be discussing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Live long and prosper. So today we're having our Star Trek caucus meeting at 3:30 p.m. and 111. Thank you.
Representative Nordberg.
Thank you, Mr.
And right.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, coinciding with Representative Rosenthal's Star Trek caucus meeting, we have the inaugural meeting of the Battlestar Galactica caucus. So come up, show your support at 3:30. It's in Representative LaButa's office. Thank you.
Representative Wright.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the opportunity to recognize that we need sci-fi diversity in our caucus. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm not going to take this opportunity to talk about the great skiing and Telluride because you can just rest assured it's there. I don't have to talk about it every week. But members, I would like to have your attention. I would like to pay a tribute to Norwood High School, who's watching online, I think, this morning. Friends in Norwood, we're not always this juvenile, but it's Friday, and we're having a good time. But I would like to congratulate the girls basketball team of Norwood High School, who last Saturday won the 1A state championship with a 25-1 record. So please give them all a hand. Thank you.
Representative Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would ask to be excused on Monday. I have talked to the majority and the minority leader.
Representative Quorum be excused as requested. Representative Court.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, guess what? I'm here to give you the coffee report. Kathy just told me, please don't call out those who haven't paid, but there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 who have paid. Now, there are 35 of us here. If I do that quick math, that's 20-something, 23, that haven't paid. If you drink coffee and you haven't paid your 20 bucks, get it in to Kathy, our chief assignable clerk, today, please. Thank you.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, each year we celebrate National Single Parents Day. Today is March the 21st, National Single Parents Day. And, you know, we have a lot of parents out there. We have single moms, we have single dads who take care of our kids every day. And we know that it even takes sometimes two in the household to take care of our children. And so today, if you would just recognize National Single Parents Day, I do have a tribute to Ms. Janice Moglen, who helps us with this every year. So if you would welcome Ms. Moglen to the chambers, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Hamner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And before we start into our regular business today, we have a birthday in the House. So I need to call the Capitol Choir down for another celebration of another great colleague with a March birthday. And does anyone know whose birthday it is today?
It's not mine.
You don't know? It's Representative Melton's birthday today. So let's join him in a beautiful rendition of Happy Birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Representative Melton. Happy birthday to you.
Okay. Any further announcements or introductions? Seeing none, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House proceed out of order for consideration of SJR 16 and HJR 1010 in that order.
Seeing no objection, the House will proceed out of order for consideration of the resolutions listed by the Majority Leader. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to SJR 16.
Senate Joint Resolution 16 by Senators Grantham and Nicholson, also Representatives Becker and Wright, concerning the renaming of the tunnels located within Clear Creek County and commonly referred to as the Twin Tunnels as the Veterans Memorial Tunnels.
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move Senate Joint Resolution 14-016 and ask that it be read at length.
Whereas Colorado has a proud and distinguished history of dedicated military service by men and women of this state whose courage, heroism, and sacrifice preserve the liberties and democratic way of life set forth in our state and federal constitutions. And whereas Colorado benefits significantly from the presence and military service of the more than 60,000 men and women in our state who serve in the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard, the branch reserves, the Colorado National Guard, and the Civil Air Patrol. And whereas, in addition to active members of the armed services, Colorado is the proud home of more than 426,000 military veterans who have served their country long and well and who bring great honor and distinction to the state. And whereas Colorado is home not only to active duty service personnel and veterans, but also to the countless family members of these men and women who display the same dedication, courage, and sacrifice. And whereas Clear Creek County, one of the original territorial counties in Colorado, has a long history of involvement with active duty service personnel and veterans. And whereas the roads and highways that run through Clear Creek County have seen the footsteps of militia soldiers going to serve in the Civil War and the vehicles of soldiers going to serve in World War I and World War II. And whereas the Clear Creek County roads have seen the return of these soldiers who would build the state's mining industry in the 19th century and the ski industry in the 20th century due to the skill and knowledge of the 10th Mountain Division troops. And whereas the portion of Interstate 70 that runs through Clear Creek County and that includes the tunnels commonly known as the Twin Tunnels was part of the original Victory Highway established in 1921 in honor of the American forces who lost their lives in World War I. And whereas this section of Interstate 70 was also designated as a Blue Star Highway in the 1940s in honor of those who served during World War II. And whereas Colorado should also never forget the sacrifices made by its 94 men declared missing in action or prisoners of war while defending the principles of liberty and justice during the Cold War and the conflicts in Korea, Laos, and Vietnam. And whereas between 1950 and 2006, 641 Coloradans were killed in action and 101 Coloradans were wounded in action, and the state should never forget the sacrifices of those 742 soldiers. And whereas in times of conflict around the globe, it is particularly appropriate to recognize the Coloradans in all branches and components of the armed services who serve around the world to protect the security and peace of our nation and other nations. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 69th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that the tunnels located within Clear Creek County on Interstate 70, commonly referred to as the Twin Tunnels, be designated at the east and west entrances as the Veterans Memorial Tunnels. That the Colorado Department of Transportation may accept and expend gifts, grants, and donations for the purposes of the initial placement of signs to mark the Twin Tunnels as the Veterans Memorial Tunnels. That the Colorado Department of Transportation may explore a cooperative agreement with the Board of County Commissioners for Clear Creek County for the maintenance of the markings for the Veterans Memorial Tunnels, and that such signage be installed and erected at the conclusion of the planned construction and widening of the so-named Veterans Memorial Tunnels. Be it further resolved, the copies of this joint resolution be sent to President Barack Obama, Governor John Hickenlooper, Colorado Department of Transportation Executive Director Don Hunt, United States Secretary of Transportation Anthony Fox, Lieutenant General Michelle Johnson, Superintendent, United States Air Force Academy, Major General H. Michael Edwards, Adjutant General of Colorado, Major General Paul LaCamera, Commanding General, 4th Infantry Division at Fort Carson, Colonel Daniel Wright III, Commander of the 460th Space Wing, Buckley Air Force Base, Colonel William LaCory Jr., Commander, 50th Space Wing, Schriever Air Force Base, Colonel John Shaw, Commander, 21st Space Wing, Peterson Air Force Base, the Colorado Board of Veterans Affairs, the United Veterans Committee of Colorado, Mountain States Chapter Paralyzed Veterans of America, the American Legion Department of Colorado Veterans of Foreign Wars, Clear Creek County Veterans Coalition, the Clear Creek County Commissioners, the Idaho Springs City Council members, the Mayor of Idaho Springs, Mike Hillman, and each member of Colorado's congressional delegation.
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, colleagues, for joining me in honoring the veterans of our state by renaming the Twin Tunnels on I-70 for the more than 425,000 veterans who call Colorado home. It's a small gesture, but to the millions of truckers, visitors, skiers, and locals who travel I-70 every year, it's an important shout out to the veterans of our state and our country that we remember, we appreciate, and we honor you. Thank you to the Clear Creek County Veterans Coalition for bringing this idea forward, and I'm happy to be the sponsor of this important resolution, so thank you.
Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for the opportunity that you've given myself and Representative Becker to co-sponsor this important resolution, and for all of my colleagues in the House to take just a short moment to recognize our veterans in a small way, but a very meaningful way for our state. I'll tell you, I drive through these tunnels going back to my district on the West Slope on a regular basis, and being able to see the construction work phase by phase being done on the tunnels, I'll tell you, it was an incredible engineering feat. And watching our CDOT men and women work on that tunnel, and the contractors and the subcontractors do that job is just incredibly impressive. So to recognize our veterans in such a way, not just the tunnels, but the work that was completed to make these tunnels, and the important contribution that these tunnels will continue to be to our commerce and transportation, people moving up into the ski slopes, transporting goods and services through our state, and the important role that plays to our economy, I think is a great way to honor our veterans. So to all of you in Clear Creek County, thank you for getting the ball rolling on this to honor our men and women in uniform, and thank you for the opportunity, again, colleagues, to offer this resolution.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to taking a voice vote? Seeing none, we'll proceed in that manner. All those in favor of SJR 16 say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. SJR 16 is adopted. Representative Wright.
Mr. Speaker, I move to have the House morning roll call added as co-sponsors, please.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be made the co-sponsors of SJR 16. Thank you, Representatives. We'll proceed to our next resolution, HJR 1010. Mr. Cole, please read the title of the HJR 1010. With the mic on, please.
Yes, sir. House Joint Resolution 1010 by Representatives Singer and Buck, also Senators Nicholson and Renfro, concerning the recognition of flood recovery efforts throughout the state.
Representative Singer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move HJR 1010 and ask that it be read at length.
Whereas the September 2013 flood was a devastating natural disaster, and whereas 10 lives were lost and many more imperiled as a result of the flood, and whereas local, state, and national fire and rescue personnel put their own lives at risk to assist those in need of rescue, and whereas civilian volunteers also put their own lives at risk to assist those in need of rescue, and whereas many people in the affected areas suffered irreparable damage to their homes and livelihoods, and whereas many communities suffered significant damage to roads and bridges and to power, communications, and water and sewer systems, and whereas the National Guard, the Colorado Department of Transportation, and untold other government, private, and volunteer organizations have worked swiftly and tirelessly to restore access to those dispossessed by the flood and its aftermath. And whereas the Colorado Department of Public Safety, through its Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, organized mission assignments, resource management, and logistics for flood recovery efforts, coordinated emergency response efforts of other agencies, including the National Guard and the Colorado Department of Transportation, worked closely with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and through the Colorado State Patrol provided security and participated in emergency operations. And whereas the commissioners of Adams, Boulder, Chaffee, Clear Creek, Denver, El Paso, Fremont, Gilpin, Jefferson, Lake, Larimer, Lincoln, Logan, Morgan, Otero, Park, Prowers, Pueblo, Sedgwick, Washington, and Weld counties, and the mayors and other city officials of the affected communities have worked tirelessly to assist individuals, families, and businesses impacted by the flood and to address the damage done to residential homes, businesses, and infrastructure in their communities. And whereas Colorado state and local governments, the federal government, private sector organizations, faith-based and other nonprofit volunteer organizations, including the Colorado Mounted Rangers, and countless individuals have worked tirelessly to assist individuals, families, and businesses impacted by the flood and to address damage done to homes, businesses, and infrastructure. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 69th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, proudly recognize and commend the vibrant Colorado spirit that brought neighbors out to help neighbors, the local, state, and federal governments for their swift action in saving both human and animal lives and in restoring infrastructure, local, national, and international businesses for their assistance in the flood recovery efforts, and faith-based and other nonprofit relief organizations from around the world that have worked tirelessly to rebuild communities and shelter families. That the recovery effort is not over, and that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, must continue to be mindful of and address the needs of the victims of this event and future catastrophic events. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint resolution be sent to President Barack Obama, the Honorable Governor John Hickenlooper, Rick Ramish, the Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Corrections, Robert K. Hammond, the Commissioner of Education, Reggie Baika, the Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Human Services, Reeves Brown, the Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, Mike King, the Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Natural Resources, Dr. Larry Wolk, the Executive Director and Chief Medical Officer of the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, James H. Davis, the Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Public Safety, Donald E. Hunt, the Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Transportation, Major General H. Michael Edwards, the Adjutant General of Colorado for the Colorado National Guard, and the members of the Colorado Congressional Delegation.
Representative Singer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before you sit, thank you, members. With the hundreds of miles of road that needed to be repaired and the hundreds of millions, if not billions, in still unmet need, I want to go beyond the numbers for just 1 second and recognize those that lost their lives in the flood and read their names. We'll start with Jerry Boland, a Lyons math teacher whose body was actually identified by one of his former students and our county coroner, Emma Hall. Patty Goodwine, age 61, Evelyn Starner, age 79, Joseph Howlett, age 72, the owner of the local Jamestown Mercantile, where everyone in Jamestown came to gather. Danny Davis, age 54, James Bettner, age 47, Carol White, age 83, and last but not least, 2 lives that were lost on a Boulder County road. Wyana Nelson, who was trapped in her car, got swept away, and she did the right thing by jumping out of the car to get to high ground, was swept away. Her boyfriend, Wesley Quinlan, jumped in after her, was able to pull her head out of the water, and then they were both swept downstream, both age 19. Please be seated. Thank you. Beyond the numbers, there's a story in all of these situations. This wasn't a local flood. It wasn't a Democratic flood. It wasn't a Republican flood. It went through Boulder County. It went through Larimer County, from Jamestown to Sterling, all the way down to Colorado Springs and Pueblo. Everybody saw and heard a little something different September 11th, 12th, 13th, and even still today. So I just want to share with you a couple of the stories that I've heard that are inspiring. And we'll start with Pinewood Springs, where Representative Buck and I actually kind of share a little bit of that together. And there are 2 individuals, Christy and Anthony Leonard, that couldn't be with us today, who run the Colorado Cherry Company. If you see those cherry pies up when you're heading up the road, they have a couple of stands out there. And as they were caught in the flood and gathering people together, they put a pot of coffee on. They made sure that all the local residents had enough food to eat. But they also had a dog that was about to be born. And the National Guard was able to step up in a way that would airlift some of the residents out of there. One of those residents ended up being a 13-ounce newborn dog, now named Chinook, after the helicopter that airlifted it out of danger. The Cherry Company is also now well known among our men wearing the red, white, and blue, our soldiers, as pies were baked fresh for them throughout the relief efforts. Working downstream just a little further, down in Lyons, Oscar Blues heard the call and saw the business owners were struggling left and right after the flood. When your town is shut down for 30 days and you've got a roadblock going up, and you know that your major source of income is 2 things: sales taxes from people coming through and buying things, and speeding tickets. Well, they weren't getting either of those 2 for at least 30 days. Well, Oscar Blues heard the call, founded something called Canned Aid, and have already been able to raise $300,000 in individual contributions and corporate contributions to make sure that business owners that were affected in this flood just stay in the game. They're just providing $2,000 or $3,000 or $5,000 grants just to help business owners make payroll. They're even giving money to their competitors because they understand they don't want a second flood, an economic flood that's going to wipe all of them out when there's a catastrophic failure of businesses. So they're helping folks out there. And probably the most inspiring story that I've heard from this building is the way that our Democratic and Republican leadership got together, formed a flood committee of equal Democrats and Republicans. It would have been very easy to turn this into a partisan issue, but instead we turned it into not a Democratic issue, not a Republican issue, but a Colorado issue. And we didn't just stay here at the Capitol to work on these issues, but we actually went out to the flood-affected areas. We went out to Evans and to Milliken. And so for a Boulder County representative to take the time to meet people in Weld, to take the time to meet people up in Larimer County, to realize that we're all struggling with the same things. And we're all trying to do the right thing. And we're all struggling with some different things as well. And there are unique issues everywhere. We all gather the understanding that we need to work together on this issue, and we don't have time for the usual partisan bickering that we get to see here. It was probably best summed up in giving out personal stories with one of our own state representatives here, Representative Lori Sain. When the floodwaters started coming in and I was essentially left stranded on my 3rd floor apartment, her call was the first call to come to me. Before my parents, before my friends, by the way, it was my birthday, but I had to exchange my birthday candles for road flares almost. But Lori Sane was the first to call to make sure I was okay. And when my town, Longmont, was split in half, she was the one that took the time to drive out to the south part of Longmont and to Niwot, to Rocky Mountain Christian Church, to deliver blankets and whatever needed to happen. It wasn't her district, but this flood made all our districts our district. And lastly, I just want to thank all of our citizens for stepping up in ways that we can't even imagine, doing things that they couldn't even imagine a couple months ago. I want to thank our soldiers that came in from Utah, Montana, Kansas, and all around the country. As we were sending them off, I asked them if they were coming back, and they said, "We love Colorado. This is way better than Afghanistan." But truthfully, they can't wait to come back. They didn't know mountains could look so great. And also our out-of-state relief groups, the private organizations, the church groups, the Mennonites from Pennsylvania, all of these folks. This was the second flood, the flood of relief that came in, and we couldn't get to where we are today without their work over the last few months. This isn't over, folks. People are still struggling. There's still billions of dollars in unmet need. There's still billions of millions of dollars in individual need that need to happen on top of our infrastructure need. And there are still hundreds of homeless families that still have not returned to their own homes. The one thing I do here at the Capitol, and some of you may seen my ratty shoes that I wear every day. I have a pair of Rockports that I've worn every day this year. They're a little beat up, but the reason I wear them is they're the only shoes that the rules would allow me to wear that I wore during the flood recovery efforts and the relief efforts I engaged in. The leather is worn and the tread is threadbare at this point. But it serves as a reminder to me, every time I slip a little bit on the marble floors, I remember that there are actually people out there that are still homeless, that are still struggling, that are still jobless because of a flood that happened in September. And we need to continue that work and make sure that this Colorado comeback is a story we can share for generations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I encourage an aye vote on House Joint Resolution 1010.
Representative Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Singer, and sharing those stories. They bring a lot of memories back, and we are not out of the woods. I would just like to say that no words really seem adequate to express our admiration and gratitude for the brave and women who run towards danger to selflessly save others. First responders and local and state agencies were instrumental in keeping our communities safe, not only in times of disaster, but every day. And unfortunately, it seems that we recognize the brave and generous acts just only when tragedy occurs. And we shouldn't need something terrible to happen to us to realize how fortunate we are for such well-trained men and women there for us in every moment of life. I just have a personal note. A good friend of mine, Dennis Buck, we're not related, but now we have considered ourselves brother and sister. But he Facebooked me and he says, if you want to go up there to Estes Park in Glen Haven, I'll take you up, because I wasn't sure how to get up there in that area. So I met him out on a park and ride, and we went in his car, and I was able to take several pictures and realize how devastating that flood was, and more than anything to the Glen Haven area. But as Representative Singer says, this brings communities together, and immediately they started raising funds for T-shirts that said Mountain Strong or Glen Haven Strong. And I have several pictures of myself on the Facebook of just those T-shirts. But I have to be honest with you, they're more than just victims of the floods. They are family now. And I'm in contact with them daily to see how much more that I can help them. But again, I could share more stories, but I'm going to leave the mic and let Representative Giroux.
Representative Foote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much, Representative Singer and Buck, for this resolution. And I appreciate also the good stories that you brought and sharing with us all, because it's important to highlight that, of course, when we talk about the response to tragedy and to the flooding. I always like to, at town halls and whenever I speak about the flooding, to remind folks that this is not over. And I'll pick up a little bit where Representative Singer left off on that. It says it in the resolution as well, right at the end, that this is not over. And I've heard some folks say that really, in fact, this is merely halftime of what we're looking at as a result of this this disaster. And I'm not even sure if halftime is correct. I may even think it's the end of the first quarter, because I've heard folks from state government, private entities, cities, other locals talk about the fact that it's going to take a solid 5, 6, or more years to recover from what happened in September of last year. And they're working as hard as they can, of course, and the great uncertainty out there is what's going to be happening this spring. Just heard from someone from the Water Conservation Board yesterday who spoke about the fact that the water level of the rivers now and the streams is higher, very much higher than average. It's like the water is still being flushed out. The water is still going downstream from September of 2013. We all know that snowpack is higher than average in most parts of the state, particularly the northern part of the state, up to 140% at this point of normal. And there's a lot of concern from the locals and from state officials and others that we may be looking at another situation this spring during the runoff. I just want folks to know, though, that as I'm out there and we're all out there speaking with the people that are most responsible for preparing, that they are working hard, they are focused, they remain focused on preparing as best they can. Of course, Mother Nature can't be controlled, but we can try to prepare as best we can, and that's what they're doing. The state and local and county officials are all working well together. They're focused, and we're just going to have to cross our fingers and see. We hope that it's not going to be too bad, but I just want folks to know that that it could be, and we need to remain as focused as we were back in September and October of last year. Sometimes it's hard, though. I mean, even in my district, there was certain parts of the district that were devastated, certain that were not devastated as badly or maybe not even touched, but it's hard when you go about your day-to-day business to remember necessarily the flooding of 2013, but the effects are still there. There's still so much unmet need. There's still folks that are out of housing, and then we've got this looming issue with the spring runoff. So please, I guess the purpose of this is just to let all of you folks know and the people at home to remain focused, and to know also that the locals are remaining focused, and we'll do the best we can come this spring. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Buck and Representative Singer, for bringing this resolution forward. I don't want to repeat a lot of what we've heard already, but I do want to emphasize a few things, and please know that we still grieve for the 10 lives that were lost. You know, the message that Representative Foote just delivered is one I want to reiterate, and that is that we have made a lot of progress so far, but there is still a lot more to do. In my district, there are hundreds of students who go to the Greeley-Evans School District that are still displaced. And, you know, as Representative Foote and Singer and Buck have said, it's easy to think that maybe we've recovered fully, and we haven't. People are still in distress, and we appreciate all the work that's been done so far, but there's still a lot more to do. So please don't forget that that's the message, that's the takeaway for today. You know, whenever there's a disaster that occurs, I don't know if this happens to you, but it happens to me. There's moments, there's visuals that I remember. And there's an area south of Evans where the Little Thompson River and the South Platte come together. And normally the Little Thompson in September is just a trickle, hardly any water going through there at all. On September 13th, I looked across a river that was at least a mile wide. And I watched my friend Bernie Kendall break out his canoe. He's a river guide, and he took his canoe down and went out and rescued cattle that were in danger of drowning. The South Platte crested at almost 19 feet near Evans, which eclipsed the previous record by 7 feet. To get a sense of that, look at the gallery, and that'll give you an idea of almost how high that was. And I recall walking through the Eastwood Manufactured Home Park and seeing these devastated homes stacked like cordwood on top of each other. We couldn't see a water line, and the reason we couldn't see a water line, it was above the top of those homes. I recall walking into the Evans Community Complex where the city was launching their disaster response center, and I found many friends and neighbors already busy doing their response work. And I also discovered Assistant Chief Charles Balke from the Cortez Fire Department, along with firefighters from across the state working side by side with the members of the Evans community. It made me realize that we were sticking together as a state to recover and to respond to this disaster. I spent some time knocking and walking door to door with the Debbie Pilch and her staff at Colorado Spirit. They're going around in those flood impacted areas and going door to door to find out how people are doing. That's hard work. We've all done that, and we know it's hard work, but they've been 3 times through all of the homes in that area, checking on people and calculating the unmet need. As Representative Singer talked about, we took the tour of the flood impacted areas, and I remember town mayors and council members each standing strong amid the destruction, vowing to lead their communities to recovery. That was a powerful, powerful moment at each little town. And I recall jumping out of the tour van, and Representative Buck has talked about Glen Haven, but I ended up standing face to face with Dr. Tony Fink. Tony Fink is a retired Greeley physician, and there he was. He's a little taller than me, so I had to jump up and down to be face to face with him, but there he was. And he was trying to craft an emergency ambulance out of an ATV and an old stretcher, because he knew all of these retired people were going to be up in these areas. We couldn't get a regular ambulance up there, and he said, I know how strong these folks are. They're going to go out and they're going to be doing all that work to recover. Somebody's going to probably overdo it, and we're going to have to run up there and rescue them. Tony asked us not to forget that they still need help, and Tony, we haven't forgotten. So I want to thank all the levels of government, all of the folks that are working from nonprofits and our other faith-based communities that have come out to try to help us recover. And finally, I'd like to thank the Flood Disaster Study Committee members. Representative Singer talked about this. It's their hard work and commitment to work together in a bipartisan fashion that is helping us build a better Colorado. And so I want to recognize them. My co-chair who's worked with me, Minority Caucus Chair Senator Refro, Minority Leader Representative Del Grosso, Representatives Foote, Humphrey, Singer, and Sonnenberg, Senators Jones, Kafalas, Lambert, Lundberg, and Nicholson. Their work has been stellar. I've been honored to have the opportunity to work with them. And we're not done. We're going to continue to work. So members, I know you'll stand with me and all Coloradans in support of this resolution. Thank you again, Representative Singer and Buck, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Buck and Representative Singer, thank you for bringing the resolution. And I appreciate the fact that we're able to reflect on this. There's one issue I'd like to point out. So if you look at a Colorado map, all the areas affected are right up here. And I live like right down there, except it's up against the foothills. My district goes all the way to Boulder, and I know that Representative Becker is down here, and I'm sure she's going to talk about the devastation that they experienced in Boulder, and it was incredible. But I have a road, it's Highway 72, everything, as you drive up 93, just about everything to the west side of 93 is my district, and I used to have some of the east side of 93, but Representative Szabo stole that. But most of that area is mine, and there's a road, Highway 72, that goes between, basically it goes from 93 to 72, and it goes the back way into Nederland, and goes into Boulder County. that road was completely destroyed. And I know that seems like it's pretty far south, and it really was, but even in my community of Evergreen, because the downtown area of Evergreen is all along a creek, there were there were eating establishments, and there was infrastructure in the Evergreen Dam on our lake that were damaged. Our water and sewage system was damaged for a few days. But the point of it is the devastation went so far. And you wouldn't have thought that many people were impacted by this, but they actually were. It's incredible when you see the people that come out and volunteer. Some of you may have gone to the ACEC luncheon. They always host a luncheon for us every year at the Capitol. And it's the Association of Engineers in Colorado. And they were remarkable because they banded together immediately, and they went out and they did structural. When you're an engineer in Colorado, you're licensed generally. You can be a specialist, but they're all engineers. But they had water quality engineers that were out volunteering. They had structural engineers that were looking at roads and bridges. There were people that went out and just did damage assessments just because they're good people and they care about people in Colorado, and I admire them. In my particular area, I really am very grateful to Representative Lawrence. Her company dropped everything, and if you're on Highway 72, it's so isolated, there was really only one way in and one way out. And there were people that were driving over 50 miles a day just trying to get to and from their home, if they could be. And most of the people that were really impacted hadn't been able to go home for over 3 months. So Lawrence Construction came in and they did the fastest, best repair I ever thought possible in horizontal transportation. When the flood happened in September, there were people that hadn't been able, they would periodically let them go in and look at the damage. And you know, the whole time you're gone, your homes are being destroyed, the damage, you can't help it. And it's very frustrating. But Lawrence started immediately on the construction of 72, and before Thanksgiving it was opened up. And is it done? No. Is it perfect? Not quite yet. But those people can come and go, and that makes such a difference. Imagine what it would be like if you couldn't go home tonight. And then, oh, by the way, you can't go home for the next 3 months. The governor was great. Unfortunately, when they opened up Highway 72, I wasn't able to be there because I was down here working on the budget. But Senator Nicholson was there. The commissioners were there. I am just so very grateful for all those people that volunteered, dropped everything they were doing, and helped repair Colorado. Thank you for the resolution.
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this resolution to recognize not only the work that's been done here and the work of many federal agencies and many nonprofits, but to also just recognize the resiliency and human spirit of my neighbors, near and far, and the way that people pull together in a situation like this. These are the times that test our communities the most, and the people of Colorado, along with all the help that came from outside of the state, really passed that test amazingly well. When the rain started and the floods started, we saw that our neighborhood parks were turned into lakes and our neighborhood streets were turned into rivers. And as my own house flooded, the calls came in immediately. What do you need? And then the shop vacs showed up, and the fans showed up, and the shovels. And the few days later, it was the trucks that showed up to move the soggy carpet and the rotting drywall. And then it was just all the labor that showed up to move things and to help each other, and everyone went from house to house. It was amazing. And then everyone provided their own sleeping bags and their couches and their guest bedrooms to the many people in my district who were displaced from their own homes. And so while the work that continues, what I like to think about most is those first weeks when everyone was there for each other. It was absolutely impressive and moving and dramatic, and I really honor the people of Colorado for their resiliency and human spirit. And as my own district will spend the next several years trying to repair the damage, I just want to hold that memory of the great people who all came out to help each other.
Representative Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you to Representatives Buck and Singer. This is a great time to recognize some people and express our gratitude. And I'll just focus on my district. There's a lot that could be said about a lot of other areas, and we've seen so much on the Flood Committee, on the tours that we've done that have been so helpful. But I just wanted to thank, I guess I could start with just the county government in Weld County, who did such a great job responding, getting roads open as quick as they could, knowing that there was a spring harvest that was just about to start coming in. There's a lot of pressure on them, and they responded incredibly well. And then, of course, the town of Evans and Mayor Oxinger did a great job responding to everything there, and I appreciated their work in Milliken, which was sort of an island over that weekend right after that rain started. Mayor Milt and Mayor Pro Tem Julie Kozad, who's here this morning, but we'll do those introductions after we vote, is how I understand we're doing this. And they just did such a great job making sure that people had a place to go in town, to the local school where it was dry and safe, who lived down close to the water. And it was just really, really impressive, and you just see the best come out in people in these situations, and you see what their character and their mettle and their dedication, and so thankful to them. And then just the nonprofits that came out, I'm thinking particularly of Samaritan's Purse that came out in Weld County and set up and got out there and just gutted people's homes and did so much work that would have cost so much money for them to help them out. And it was just really an honor to get out, and I actually came out to try to help with some of that, and I got used to make phone calls, all morning long, and for debris removal, which we all learned was such a huge task and overwhelming for all the local governments. And so we found some really great local businesses that stepped up to do that. Gusher Oil Services out in Weld County, I'm really thankful to them. They just said, we'll not only do this lady's property here, Sue Israel, but we'll take care of this whole street, and we'll just clean up all the debris, take it all away, haul it all away. And that just meant a lot to those people. And just standing there talking to a couple of them, they just said, this is really kind of widow row here. We're on fixed incomes, and this just means the world to us. And so that sort of thing is what I'll remember the most. And thank you again for this resolution.
Representative Kraft-Tharp.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Singer. Thank you, Representative Buck, for bringing this. I want to rise and support this resolution. And while I think that we are all in awe at the devastation that happened in the northern part of our state, I also want to recognize those others that experienced devastation. My neighbors, not actually in my district, in Representative Szabo's district, who experienced flooding, to the people who lost their houses, who that lost their roads, who are still trying to recover, who are still trying to find a place to live, to the neighbors who stepped up, to Ray Rears and Arvada, who stepped up, who pulled together the neighbors, who pulled together the politicians, who said, we may not be lions, we may not have the devastation of Jamestown, but we have a neighborhood where the flooding came and just wiped people's houses out, and we needed help. to Jeffco Mental Health, who continues to go door to door up Coal Creek Canyon and in Arvada and checking on people to see what do you need. I really want to say thank you. And I also want to say thank you to my cities who, because of the flood work that they've been doing for years, saved a lot of Arvada and Westminster, because we've been preparing through our creeks for years. So thank you, representatives, for bringing this, and thank you for all that helped in this.
Representative Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I know I'm going to leave some folks out and remembering some of the actions that were taken during the flood, but I want to say that there's many representatives here today, let's start out with that actually represented their communities because they didn't wait for others to help. They jumped right in. And they did what citizens and neighbors had to do to help their fellow neighbors get back on their feet. And I just wanted to mention Representative Senior and Senator Jones were immediately out checking on their constituents. I know that Representative Buck was up in Glen Haven, and Representative Humphrey is too humble to say, but he was out mucking basements for his neighbors and actually corralling horses and putting them back in corrals. So quite a man there. But it was really quite an experience. And Representative Humphrey and I help with businesses, and we're in our boots up to 6 inches deep, mucking out some of these businesses, and they it's amazing the resiliency of some of our business folks that just kept going. They're actually washing off some of their products while we were in the background just getting this mud up and taking out some of this drywall. So, but Weld County, the folks in Weld County didn't wait for folks to help them. There's even restaurants that closed their doors so they can feed refugees. There was also the schools and the churches that offered their spaces up for folks to live for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks until things could be set as right as they could be. And the oil and gas companies were one of the first ones to respond with water because we didn't have water to drink. The VFWs raised money by having breakfast. And again, you can't ever truly appreciate sometimes your fire departments and your police departments until something like this happens. And it was amazing the rescues that happened. They risked their own lives to pull people out of the cars when the floodwaters were threatening to engulf them. They even lost whole fire engines that fell into giant holes, giant sinkholes. It was really just amazing what they were trying to do to keep us safe. So I realize again that I may have missed some folks that have done some many wonderful things, but that was the spirit of not only Weld County, but some of the representatives. And as Representative Senior said, it became all our districts at that point. Thank you.
Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I, too, want to thank Representative Singer and Representative Buck for bringing this resolution to refocus our attention back on the disasters that occurred last year. Colorado Springs, as some of you may not know, and Manitou Springs were also tremendously impacted by the floods. We had the Waldo Canyon fire a year prior to that, and as a result of that fire and the destruction of the hillside, that land all became what they call hyperphobic. It would not absorb water, so all the water rolled off of Waldo Canyon into Highway 24. So when the floods came, it was like just a cavalcade of water coming down. And as a result of those, the fire and then the floods, 3 individuals in Colorado Springs and Manitou Springs were killed. So I'd like to recognize James Nelson Bettner, 49, whose body was found 2 days later in Sand Creek. John Collins, a 53-year-old that lived in Cascade, Green Mountain Falls area, whose body was found in his car on Highway 24, which was washed down the pass as the floodwaters ravaged. And Rose Hamner, 17, whose body was found in Fountain Creek as a result of trying to take refuge under a bridge and got washed away. So all of these individuals were also impacted, so thank you for your recognition. I'd also like to acknowledge the city, county officials in Manitou, Colorado Springs and El Paso County, who stepped up and provided just Herculean efforts during those 2 periods of time. The flood that we got in September brought 17 inches of rain in a 48-hour period. We usually get 13 inches of rain in an entire year. So floods along the creeks were just absolutely devastating. And our first responders, our volunteers, our police, our fire, and our community pulled together to try to counteract, and it really developed community. When you walk down the streets of Manitou as people were digging out from the floods, people were just covered with mud from head to toe, from standing in basements and shoveling. And it really, truly was a brotherhood of the mud over in Manitou. So thank you, Representative Singer and Representative Buck, for bringing our attention back to the devastation and reminding us of the efforts that we're going to have to continue to counteract this ongoing threat, existential threat to our communities.
Representative Janal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I too rise in support for Resolution 141010. And I want to thank Representative Buck and Representative Singer for bringing this forward. You know, I represent Fort Collins, and I'd be remiss if I didn't come down here and say thank you to all the people who were affected and helped in the flooding that occurred in Fort Collins. We're in Larimer County, and Fort Collins really got off pretty easy compared to the rest of Larimer County. But nonetheless, we did suffer some consequences of the flooding. And I want to first thank Mayor Wyckonaut and the City Council for responding, and they were out there in their districts, and the chief, the fire chief, Dement, police chief Huda, and also all the first responders in Fort Collins, Poudre Valley Hospital, the Red Cross, the Salvation Army, the Larimer Humane Society, who was there with many, many volunteers helping animals, both large and small, get shelter and evacuation to places in Loveland and other places. But there were also a lot of volunteers that I don't know their names, but I just want to say thank you to all of you out there who did help in Fort Collins. And again, we didn't get the brunt of what most of Larimer County did, but we still were out there pulling for everyone in the county and in other counties as well. So thank you for bringing this resolution forward. And I know the city of Fort Collins also thanks you as well.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I won't spend all day again going back through thanking all of the first responders and everything else. I think my colleagues have done a great job of talking about that. But I just actually wanted to throw one of my favorite stories that I like to talk about that happened in Loveland. There was a restaurant that was in Loveland that basically their restaurant became a lake. The river that was several yards down the street suddenly with the floods changed, and they were right in the middle of the flood. So they definitely had some beachfront property there. But after the water receded and it kind of went away, they started having several customers that were driving by and noticing that all the damage. And these guys, as they started trying to clean out their restaurant, all of a sudden had customers showing up. People they didn't know, people they'd never met in their entire life. But all these people that said, you know what, we need to get our fix on because we love your food so much. We're going to do everything we can to help you get back open. And so these customers, people they had never met before, were in there helping them tear out carpet, tear out tile, They actually had some construction concrete guys come through there and basically bulldoze their parking lot for them, get them a temporary parking lot up and going. But it is truly what we saw was neighbor helping neighbor. That was the thing that we saw continually, and I know people have brought that up, but it was, you know, groups of high school kids that got together that just decided to start walking down the street, knocking on doors. Hey, we noticed you got a bunch of damage out front. We've got shovels. Do you need mud taken out? Going in there instead of going out and playing basketball or doing whatever else that, you know, high school kids like to do, the fact that they actually took the time to band together in groups and doing that. And the disaster relief center that was set up there, where they had hundreds and hundreds of people that were showing up and signing to volunteer, and the place wasn't even open yet. The reality is they actually got so many volunteers they couldn't even use them all. But that just goes to show the outpouring of neighbor helping neighbor, and, you know, people from Colorado stepping up saying, you know what, we're here to help you and your neighbor, and we're going to try to make this better for you. So that is truly, I think, that we saw the Colorado spirit at best during this. And so I want to thank again all of those people, the neighbors that were out there helping their neighbors.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to taking a voice vote? Seeing none, we'll proceed in that manner. All those in favor of HJR 1010 say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. HJR 1010 is adopted. Representative, who wants to do it? Representative Buck?
We'll just point at each other.
Singer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be made co-sponsors of HJR 1010. Representative Singer for some introductions.
Yeah, I know we have some introductions to make, and so if we can just hold our applause to the end. I know a few folks want to introduce some people. The truth of the matter is most of the relief organizations are so busy out there helping folks that they couldn't be here today. But I know Ken Hewson and Sue Anderson with the long-term recovery group should be here today. And I know that Governor Hickenlooper's staff, including Molly Urbina, Stephanie Donner, Valerie Beck, Diana Downard, Ann Brinkman, all have been playing a role, but it doesn't look like their boss gave them the day off.
To your left.
Oh, Valerie's here. Oh, in the gallery.
No, to your left.
Oh, there we go. And
right.
Aye, and last but not least, we have people watching online from Boulder Flood Relief and the Lions Community Foundation.
Representative. Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to acknowledge, and I'm not sure she's still here, Julie Kozat, who's representing, there she is, Milliken City Council, Mayor Tara Schettinger, who's the mayor of Johnstown, and Mayor Lyle Ogziger, who I think maybe his wife might be trying to be here, but those are our town officials that were able to take a little time away to join us today, and thank you for all of your work.
Representative Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to acknowledge the Big Thompson, Little Thompson people that live in the canyon. They are too busy to make it down here, but if any are so inclined to give to the Glen Haven volunteer firefighters, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Seeing no further announcement, we'll proceed to our next order of business, third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to House Bill 1282.
House Bill 1282, Representative Pabon, all Senator Talk Drop concerning specification of what materials may be provided in language other than English by an insurer to a customer.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1282 on third reading and final passage.
You've heard the motion. Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of House Bill 1282 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Buck, Priola, and Swam. Close the machine. With 62 aye votes, 0 no votes, 3 excused, and 0 absent, House Bill 1282 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Cole, please read the title of the House Bill 1286.
House Bill 1057, I think is what it is.
Mr. Cole, please read the title of the House Bill 1057.
House Bill 1057, Representative Navarro, Senator King, concerning the Colorado Fraud Investigators Unit.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1057 on third reading and final passage.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I'm going to urge an aye vote on 1057. And I say this with the fact that I have never, in my 5 years of being here, ever voted for a fee increase since I've been here in 5 years. And I feel confident that my yes vote today on 1057 will not break my streak of voting against fee increases. The fiscal note, although it is confusing as you go through there, talks about moving $1 or current fee of $3 and then going to a proposed fee of $4 and then a fee change of $1. Well, what this bill does and why it was brought about is the Fraud Investigation Unit in the Department of Public Safety. What they look at a lot of time is identity theft for businesses. So you have a business name, it's out there, it's been pretty easy for them to get a hold of your business name. And let's say maybe you get those credit slips that say Del Grosso Pizza Inc. or whatever, take out a loan, they'll go out and take out a loan in that name, but really it wasn't Del Grosso Pizza Inc., it was somebody else that took it out in my name and basically stole the identity of my business. They have a fraud investigation unit that goes after identity theft and other stuff. But what they did is they came and testified that said, we are currently have the spending authority to have 7 FTE in our division to go out and investigate these fraud charges or identity theft. But currently, the way the fee structure is set up, they only actually bring in enough people, and this is actually on page 2 of the fiscal note, they only have 2.7 FTE. So they're well below what they are statutorily allowed to have. As a result of trying to do the job of 7 people with 2.7, they have a severe backlog of these cases. So there are several businesses that have had their identity stolen and they cannot go out and investigate these, or there's such a backlog they're not having a lot of success. This is a cash-funded agency, and the only way they can actually get more money to fund their unit is to bring more money in. But what this bill seems to do is it takes the money that the Secretary of State's office from the $8 that a consumer pays. Currently, the Secretary of State's office gets $5. $3 goes to the fraud investigator unit. This bill is taking $1 from the Secretary of State's office, so instead of the Secretary of State's office getting $5, they will now get $4. Thus, when we look at page 1 where it says current fee, proposed fee, change of $1, the dollar is not paid by the consumer, it is paid by the Secretary of State's office. They have to show it somewhere. So that fee increase, now the fraud investigation unit, instead of them getting $3, are now getting $4. $4 for the Secretary of State's office, $4 for the fraud investigation unit, $8. Currently, Secretary of State's office gets $5, fraud investigation gets $3, $8. The consumer, as a result of this bill, does not pay $1 more. $8, $8, it is the same $8. Now we go back to the discussions that we had in committee. Is there potential that the Secretary of State's office could raise their fee $1 to offset the cost that they're losing? And that was where the Secretary of State's office did come and talk in Judiciary and the Finance Committee and said, well, at this point in time, we don't intend on raising our fee $1 as a result of you taking $1 away from us, but we can't guarantee that. So Representative Navarro followed up with them between committee and second reading. No backroom deal. It was a phone call that says, has the Secretary of State's office said, where are you at on this fee? And they said, well, we've had a chance more to go back and look at our budget, and we can say that we will not raise our fee $1 as a result of this bill. We will keep what we currently charge the same. So I don't know how that could be spun as a deal, backroom deal, whatever. It was a phone call to say, have you said all along that you didn't intend to, but you weren't sure you were going to do that. Now they said they won't. So $8 is all the consumer currently pays. If 1057 is to pass and be signed into law, the consumer will still only pay $8. So I know there's a lot of concern from a lot of folks that we're going to be putting an extra burden on businesses, but seeing that those businesses will pay absolutely no extra money as a result of this bill, and the backlog that is currently out there now of, I think, well over 100 cases of where these businesses are having their identity stolen, and this fraud investigation unit can now go out and actually pursue these cases further. The only person that actually benefits from this is businesses. So a no vote on this bill would actually be, let's keep the current backlog that's out there. Let's let those businesses that are getting their identity stolen continue to be stolen, and we won't be able to go out and investigate those cases. Now, I do know, and I cannot argue, that the bill is written a little weird, talks about surcharges and everything else, but this is currently a surcharge. There's currently a surcharge there. It's just moving the pot of money from one place to another. Doesn't create a new surcharge. So again, the consumers and those businesses will still only pay $8 if this bill is signed into law, which is what they currently pay. So I urge an aye vote on 1057.
Representative Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, you know that we had some pretty good debate on this yesterday. And in committee, there was some concern about the raising of fees on small businesses with these UCC filings. And that's why the direct question was asked if whether the Secretary of State's office would raise these fees on small businesses if we were to pass this law. And in truth, they said that they could not make such a promise. So it came as a little bit of a shock when Representative Navarro did come up yesterday saying that there was communications with the Secretary of State's office indicating that that no raising of fees would be had against small businesses. And that, as I said, it came as a bit of a shock because we did ask this in committee. And as a result of that conversation here in the well yesterday, I indicated to you that that I was going to be a no vote on this bill. I felt that it just seemed a little shaky to be told one thing in committee and then to be told something completely different in the well. But much to the credit of the Secretary of State's office, in particular Rich Coolidge, who sent me an email last night, this is what he said. He said, and he sent it also to Representative Melton. He said, "Gentlemen, I know there was some concern this morning about the Secretary's commitment to keeping the UCC filing fee at $8 and absorbing the extra dollar going to CBI. I want to reiterate the Secretary's commitment to you in hopes of getting you on board in time for third reading. Before committing to maintaining the fee, the Secretary wanted to be sure that next year's budget could absorb that fiscal note. Our 2014 revenues have exceeded our projections, giving us the dollars we need to keep our fees at current levels. We do need statutory authority to transfer that fee to CBI, which is why we are endorsing Rep. Navarro's bill. I would appreciate your reconsideration to come back to a yes vote. Thanks for reviewing, Rich." I really appreciate that email because it gives me some clarity in terms of what their position is. I was a yes vote in committee on this, and I'm returning back to a yes vote with this email from the Secretary of State's office. And I commend the Secretary of State's office. I commend Rich Coolidge for reaching out and saying, hey, look, there may have been some concerns, but we're bringing those concerns to the forefront with you. And so as such, members, I am asking for a yes vote on House Bill 1057.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I've never come down here on third reading, but I felt like after yesterday's debate, and it was a very spirited debate, to talk about the issues with this bill, I felt like I needed to come down. And I felt like there were a lot of unanswered questions. There were unanswered questions from the first time this was heard in the Finance Committee, the second time it was heard in the Finance Committee, and then again on the floor. In many ways, this does feel like, though, I'm voting on a deal and not a bill, because it still doesn't necessarily spell out that the dollar is going to transfer over. Now, I do appreciate the efforts that the Secretary of State's office have made in explaining that, and because I have that explanation now, which is what I think we were asking for yesterday, I will be a yes vote. But in the future, I would hope that we would craft the legislation to read exactly what it's doing, because as it reads, this is still a fee increase. It's not a transfer. And so again, let's make sure that we're voting on bills and not dills. I will be a yes on 1057.
Representative May.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Navarro, thank you for bringing the bill. I just have a question. I don't know which one I'm asking. I don't know if you've been aware of the debate that's been happening over in the JBC about the Secretary of State's budget. And currently, as they're projected on where they stand today, there's a shortfall in the Secretary of the State's budget. And we were concerned about where they stand, and what's authorized in the JBC says one amount, but when we do the revenues, it projects that they're going to be short. So I'm just curious how they plan to augment this fee when they're already short based on where they set their fee today. So that's where in the bill it says an extra $1. Don't know where they're going to get that from if they're already short. So I hear what you're saying, members, but you need to understand that we sent them a letter saying they were going to be short on revenue, so I'm just concerned.
Representative Navarro.
Thank you, Representative May, for your concern. As you know, I am a state representative. I do not work for the Department of Secretary of State. I have been given the word from the Secretary of State's office that there will not be an increase in any fees. This bill simply protects our businesses and our lenders. And for that is the purpose of this bill.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think I missed most of this debate yesterday, but I do want to chime in, and I'm going to ask for a no vote on this bill. And let me tell you why. We've had many conversations around this issue with the Joint Budget Committee, and under statute, Colorado statute, the Secretary of State is supposed to be maintaining fees at a level to where he can pay for the responsibilities of his office, and that is not happening. And so even if they say they're not raising fees, I don't know where he's going to get the money that is necessary. And so with that, just because of the mismanagement and some of the issues that have come up with the way he has not had fees at an appropriate level under Colorado statute to be able to pay for the responsibilities of the office, it is a major fiscal issue. So I'm going to ask for a no vote on this bill.
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I heard this bill in the Finance Committee. I think this is a good bill. I ask for an aye vote. I just want to be clear. The bill, if you read it, it's one page. It changes the fee for a very worthwhile cause that protects businesses from $3 to $4. That's the only thing we're voting on here, guys. Whatever happens with the Secretary of State is what happens with the Secretary of State, and there are absolutely issues with him saying he's not going to increase fees when that's exactly what this bill does. That's all it does, is increase a fee from $3 to $4. But it's for a needed program that helps business. If you want to help business protect itself from identity theft, vote yes on this bill.
Representative May.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not debating whether the merits of the bill are good or not. In the bill, it says there's a fee increase. I'm just trying to be clear on where they stand in their budget. If you are going to vote for this, it's going to be a $1 increase. They do not have the money in their budget today to offset anywhere from any other pot of money. They're short. That's the facts. So I'm not denying the merit of the bill. I think businesses should be protected. If you want to vote yes for an increase, then please do. But know that that's what you're voting on, because if you have to vote, if you're saying that they're not going to increase it, I'm going to have to supplement this with general fund, and it's going to cut from somewhere else. From the elderly, from the poor, from child welfare, from transportation, from education. You have a balanced budget, and they do not. So just be clear what you're voting on. Thank you.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I understand this is new information that was not debated yesterday, but now that we've had this long conversation, I can't stress the importance of, if we have to use general fund dollars for the Secretary of State because he is not doing what he's supposed to be doing under Colorado statute to really be able to pay for the duties of his office, if that is the case, Representative May is exactly right. If we take general fund money, it's coming from somewhere else. It is coming from some of the work we do with education, from seniors, from trying to make sure there's flood recovery in this state. So I would urge you to vote no. This is new information, and I'd urge you to vote no.
Representative Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I want to focus on what this bill does. What this bill does is it gives the capacity of the Fraud Investigation Unit to better protect businesses in Colorado against having their identity stolen and used against them to run up bills that they don't owe. We owe it to the businesses of Colorado to make sure that the Fraud Investigation Unit is properly funded. Now, I really don't think that the argument over whether the fee is coming from here or there, let's remember the underlying purpose of this bill, which is an important purpose. And the reason the Judiciary Committee voted it out unanimously was because the Fraud Investigation Unit carries out important functions to protect the businesses of the state, and I think it would be a shame if this important objective was undermined by a spat over the accounting of these fees. I wasn't happy with the way the fees structure was explained. I admit that fully, but let's not forget the important underlying purpose of this bill. Please vote yes on this bill so that businesses in Colorado can be protected better from identity theft and fraud.
Is there further discussion? Representative McNulty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I will encourage my colleagues on the Democratic side of the aisle to not use a bill aimed at combating identity theft and other forms of fraud as an opportunity to have a ghost fight with Secretary Gessler. Those conversations, Representative May, Representative Duran, I think ought to be had with the Secretary of State and ought to be had directly with him, and not use this as an opportunity to trade jabs here in the House with Secretary Gessler, but rather support what is a very good goal, a very honorable goal, and that is to protect folks from identity theft. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Remember, under rules of the House, you can only speak twice on third reading. Mr. Minority Leader. Mr. Minority Leader? No? Any further discussion? Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to clarify something here. The members of the Joint Budget Committee were speaking to the issue at hand with this bill and expressing a very important opinion here, which I want to reiterate, which is this bill calls for a fee increase. And as such, we expect that happens. and that those monies be used for the purpose of the bill, which I agree is a very good purpose. But in fact, if there is a renege on that provision in the bill, then that needs to be pointed out, and people should vote accordingly to whether they feel the bill will actually be implemented in its current form or not, as one of the items that will judge your vote. I ask that you all vote your conscience on this.
Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I come down to the well on third reading often. And I was not going to come down this time, but so many people came down and said they never came down, and now they're down here. So I thought maybe there was some reason
To the
for me
bill,
to...
Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thought there must be some reason why I should come down, and in fact, seriously, there is. This bill raises the fee temporarily, $1, for the Fraud Investigators Unit. We can have discussions, with all respect to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, we can have discussions about whether there'll be other bills or whether the accounting and the Secretary of State's office, what his responsibility is, so on and so forth. This bill does one thing. And when this bill came to appropriations, Chairman Duran, I moved the bill, it was seconded, and it came out of appropriations. Just looking at my sheet, if that is correct, I think it is, it came out 12-0. Even our proverbial no, I won't mention the name, in appropriations voted for this bill because I think, I guess I should not attribute to their motives, but the bill is about Fraud Investigators Unit. And if you're one who says, I will never vote for a fee increase, I really sort of suggest you not vote for the bill. But I have not been one of those people in the 8 years that I have been here. Because, frankly, when we passed Tabor many years ago, we set ourselves on a road of making decisions about funding a lot of things by fee increases that might have otherwise been funded by tax increases. And so you have to make those decisions. Is this a worthy cause or not? Is it something that imposing a marginal cost of $1 on UCC filings, and there are hundreds and thousands of them every year in Colorado, is it worthwhile? Is this a serious enough problem? Is there a nexus? This is important, members. Is there a nexus between that fee and the object of the fee? I'm surprised I sort of heard some discussion about that. Representative Navarro touched on that as it being a worthy goal, but it's not simply that it's a good goal. There are a lot of good goals out there. We can add $1 to everything and every fee and use it for Medicaid or use it for K-12, but that's not constitutional. Is there a nexus? And if so, is it appropriate public policy? This flew through appropriations in about 30 seconds, but when I moved it, I had looked at the bill, I had looked at the object, and I had made a rational decision when I made that motion. I hope those of you who voted with me on that motion had done the same and would today once again vote yes on House Bill 1057. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How much time do I have left so I know how long I... No, I'm just kidding. I'll make it quick.
You don't have much.
I know. At the end of the day, unless the Secretary of State raises his fee, which has got nothing to do with this bill just transfers $1 from where it's currently going to the fraud investigator unit. So the consumer, at the end of the day, will still only pay $8. I don't work in the Secretary of State's office. I don't know what his budget looks like. And if he says he doesn't have to raise his fee, he doesn't have to raise his fee. But that is something totally separate than this bill. This bill does not raise that fee. This bill just takes $1 from where it's currently going and moving it to another place. I feel comfortable that this is a fee that's paid on UCC filings, those that are conducting business here in the state. Thus, we are investigating fraud, and there is a nexus to use that dollar from one place to the other. So the consumer still only pays $8. So I urge an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the question for the House is the passage of House Bill 1057 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Buckner, Garcia. Representative Buckner. Close the machine. With 42 aye votes, 20 no votes, 3 excused, and 0 absent, House Bill 1057 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of the House Bill 1286.
House Bill 1286, by Representative Melton, all center statement concerning authorization for the State Treasurer to loan to the State Historical Society for public display items presented to the Governor as gifts to the State.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1286 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of House Bill 1286 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Gardner, Giroux, Labuda, Sonnenberg. Close the machine. With 62 aye votes, 0 no votes, 3 excused, and 0 absent, House Bill 1286 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1291.
House Bill 1291, Representatives McLaughlin and Humphrey, also Senator Renfro, concerning authorizing a charter school to employ a school security officer by contract to carry concealed handgun if the person has a valid concealed carry permit.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1291 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of House Bill 1291 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Giroux, May, and Melton. Close the machine. With 59 aye votes, 3 no votes, 3 excused, and 0 absent, House Bill 1291 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 58.
Senate Bill 58 by Senator Todd, also Representative Murray, concerning high school equivalency examinations in Colorado.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of Senate Bill 58 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of Senate Bill 58 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Buck, Del Grosso, Humphrey, McNulty, Swam. Close the machine. With 62 aye votes, 0 no votes, 3 excused, and 0 absent, Senate Bill 58 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 17.
Senate Bill 17 by Senator Roberts, also Representatives Vigil and Quorum, concerning limitation on the approval of real estate developments that use water rights decreed for agricultural purposes to irrigate lawn grass.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of Senate Bill 17 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House to pass Senate Bill 17 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Buckner, Peniston, McNulty. Close the machine. With 36 aye votes, 26 no votes, 3 excused and 0 absent, Senate Bill 17 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to Senate Bill 98.
Senate Bill 98 by Senator Zinziger, also Representatives Foote and Schaefer, concerning clarification of statutory language on crimes against at-risk elders.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of Senate Bill 98 on third reading and final passage.
We can do it with the third reading.
Do
you want to wait on it? Let's wait and figure out. Yeah. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw my motion to adopt, and I move that Senate Bill 98 be laid over until Monday.
Seeing no objection, Senate Bill 98 will be laid over until Monday. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 18.
Senate Bill 18 by Senator Nicholson, also Representatives Hamner and Young, concerning the prohibition against furnishing nicotine products to persons under 18 years of age.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of Senate Bill 18 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House to pass Senate Bill 18 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Gardner, May, Salazar. Close the machine. With 43 aye votes, 19 no votes, 3 excused and 0 absent, Senate Bill 18 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. We'll proceed to our next order of business, general orders, second reading of bills. Representative Foote. Seeing no objection, the House will resolve itself in the committee hall for consideration of general orders. Representative Foote will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for reading a bill at length. Committee amendments will not be read unless requested, as they are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and on your iPads and not read unless requested. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the Majority Leader, and the code rule is relaxed. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1295, House Bill 1312, and House Bill 1253 to the end of the calendar.
Seeing no objection, House Bills 1295, 1312, and 1253 will be laid over till the end of the calendar. Mr. Kohler, can you please read the title of House Bill 1288?
House Bill 1288, Representative Pabon, all Senator Aguilar, concerning personal belief exemptions to immunization requirements for children prior to attending school.
Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1288 and the Health Insurance and Environment Report.
To the committee report, Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in the Health Insurance and Environment Committee, and I want to thank Representative McCann, who's not here, and all those members who they were very diligent in reviewing this bill and ensuring that we got all the policy pieces correct. These are mostly technical amendments regarding who will be involved in the promulgation of the data collection policies, and discusses that it's the Department of Public Health and Environment shall work with the school districts with the analysis and interpretation of that data, and then there's conforming amendments as well on the committee report. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Amendment L012 and ask that it be displayed.
L012 is properly displayed. Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things that were of concern was whether or not this would include homeschoolers and online schoolers. So what this amendment does, it just clarifies that it does not, unless those students actually participate in part of their education in a public setting with other students, then it would include them. I would ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the intent of the bill was never to include online schools or home schools or anyone interfacing with those schools for whatever purpose. So this is a friendly amendment. I'd ask for an aye vote. That was never the intent or the scope of the bill, and I want to make sure this clarifies that. We call it a belt and suspenders amendment, and this is a friendly amendment.
Is there any further discussion on L012 to the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L012 to the committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. L012 is adopted. To the committee report, Representative Swam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I sat through the hearing last week, Thursday night. I know we're on the committee report. I sat through the hearing last week, and we are on the amendment for the Health Insurance Committee report. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
We are on the committee report at this point. Any amendments to the committee report would be can be moved.
I don't have any amendments. I just want to make a couple points. The people who spoke on both sides of this issue were very, very well informed and very passionate. And I honestly came into that hearing and was kind of surprised a little bit about how well informed both sides were. The people who were opposed to this, some highly educated, some with very frankly, horrific and even frightening stories about how vaccinations had injured their children. It's a complex issue. I ended up voting in favor of it. And one concern I had was that there's going to be a rule-making process to establish the kind of disclosures that have to be given to parents who elect to not participate in immunizations when they enroll their kids in schools. And I double-checked with the department that oversees this rulemaking process, and there will be an opportunity for everyone including people who have concerns about this bill, for them to make their voice heard, and I certainly would encourage them to do so. So I think that is a good process. The other thing I want to say about this bill is that this is not an easy bill. My daughter we're now expecting our first grandchild, and during the hearing, she's a nurse. I texted her and asked her about this, and she actually works at Children's Hospital. And she replied and said, even in the healthcare community, there is disagreement on both sides of this issue by people who are knowledgeable. So I think it's easy to think that the solution and the outcome of this kind of a piece of legislation is obvious, but I don't think it is. And but balancing everything, I decided that this is a good bill. And Representative Pabon, I appreciate your carrying it. And thank you.
So just a reminder, members, we're still to the committee report. Is there any further discussion about the committee report? Seeing no further discussion about the committee report, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The committee report is adopted. Now to the bill, Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, it is a pleasure to be presenting to you House Bill 1288. You should have a little bit of history to this. This bill arises from multiple stakeholder meetings that were held this summer, including 25 different stakeholders over 6 months. They met at least 3 times and had 8 sector-specific focus group meetings and multiple key informant interviews. And here's why they had these meetings. Under Colorado law today, all children enrolled in licensed child care in schools, both public and private, must be immunized against a series of vaccine-preventable diseases, like measles and pertussis. And I've spoken to many of you about the issues of epidemic outbreaks of pertussis in the state of Colorado, and we've had one now for the 2nd year in a row. What Colorado recognizes is the right for parents to exempt their children from these requirements for 3 purposes: medical purposes, religious purposes, and personal belief exemptions. We're doing nothing in this bill, just to be very clear, with the medical and religious exemptions. What we are requiring under the bill is that and what the current law is right now, is that a parent's signature is all that is required to exempt your child under a personal belief exemption. And what's happening is it's easier and more convenient to sign that form than it is to provide immunization records to a child care provider or school. Contrast that with the rest of the country. Colorado has the 6th highest rate of immunization exemptions in the U.S., with 4.3% of children exempted from vaccines in 2012 and 2013. This is the statistics that's most striking. 3,000 kindergartners enter school without protection from one or more of these vaccine-preventable diseases. So what this bill does, it preserves the personal belief exemption. Let me say that again. It preserves the personal belief exemption. And it requires that parents to exercise this exemption demonstrate that they've received information about the risks and benefits of vaccination, both for their student and the community. The other piece that this does, and this is for those who are in committee, you remember the folks, the children who are suffering from leukemia and cancer and had immune suppressed situations where they couldn't get vaccines. And they were being exposed to those who also had their parents exercise this personal belief exemption. This gives those parents some transparency on the rates of vaccination in those school facilities so they can decide for themselves and their children, is this the best public health decision for me? So in a nutshell, Representative Swalm did mention the rulemaking process for this information that will be provided, as well as the online module. It's a rulemaking process. For those of you who know, that means a large stakeholder process, time to comment and opine on what that draft module and draft rules look like, and then final adoption will be made. So it's a robust process involving all sides on this issue. But again, this is not mandatory vaccinations. This is not a change to personal belief exemption. This is simply saying if you exercise this option, you will get some disclosures about the risks and benefits, and then there will be a transparency piece on the vaccination rates. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in opposition to this bill. I heard this in committee, and I got to tell you, I stand firmly for parental rights on this issue. Currently, under current law, a parent's signature is the only requirement to elect a personal belief exemption. And what this bill claims is that it strikes the right balance between preserving parent choice and protecting public health. For now, it maintains in statute the personal belief exemption option, but I'm not confident that that is the ultimate goal. But for now, it does preserve that graciously, while ensuring the bill claims that parents are making well-informed decisions. The assumption is, of course, that these parents are not well informed, that they're not properly educated, and that they need some form of special education mandated by the state. It's just not necessary. Just provide information in a non-coercive fashion that respects parental rights, and allow them to elect that as is current law. I would move L007 and ask that it be properly displayed. I withdraw that motion.
The motion is withdrawn. Anything further, Representative Humphrey? Is there any further discussion? Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do want to say that I agree with Representative Pabon when he says that we do have these exemptions already for medical, for religious, and for philosophical. And indeed, the bill does not change that. However, I would also argue then the bill is not needed, because there are many studies, and I just want to illustrate for both sides of the aisle why there may be some philosophical differences on these vaccines and why this bill may not be needed. A lot of these parents, they do care about their children, and they do care about their health and well-being. There's many reasons besides medical. One of the cases I do want to revisit just real quick to illustrate why the philosophical is so important, and important to many members on both sides of the aisle, is that there was a case study that is illustrated in medical journals. It's pretty well available, but the case of Hannah Poling. And when she was 19 months old, she received 5 vaccines. And at the time, some of these medical journals describe Hannah before the vaccines as interactive, playful, and communicative. 2 days later, she was lethargic, irritable, and febrile. And 10 days after vaccination, she developed a rash consistent with the vaccine-induced varicella. Now, what's particular about some of these cases is that, and particularly in the case of Hannah Poling, it was for the first time that federal authorities actually they actually found a connection between her autistic symptoms and the vaccine she received. The case is also a bit unique because she was delayed on some of these vaccines. Her parents had intended to vaccinate her, but because of a series of earaches, they delayed it. And as a result, she received 5 vaccines at once. So her family was paid for their injuries because autistic-like symptoms basically are autism. And the CDC has found, just so members know, and this is very important, the CDC has found that 1 in 50 children actually have mitochondrial disorders. And one of the directors of CDC admitted on an interview that the vaccines may have caused the autism conditions in Hannah Poling because of that mitochondrial disease. So members, there is some basis for the philosophical as well as the medical. Parents have done the research on vaccination, and again, I feel that this bill isn't necessary because I believe parents are the best source of they're the best source of input on their children's lives and what they feel their children need, whether they should be vaccinated or not vaccinated. And one of the other things that does come up frequently, just so everybody knows, that thimerosal is mercury-based. Even though it's an organic mercurial, it is a neurotoxin. It is still present in some of our vaccines. And it, again, if some child, and you don't know until something like this happens, it's not something you can find out ahead of time if a child has this, and it's 1 in 50. But this vaccine could produce symptoms of autism. Thank you.
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of House Bill 1288. I think this is a good balance on this issue. You know, we do need to make sure that kids in schools are vaccinated. You know, just a little bit of my personal experience. I'm pretty much the poster child for vaccinations. Had a little booklet when I was growing up as a kid, had a stamp for all the different vaccinations. And I think, you know, if you look at that whole period, starting with, the, you know, particularly the 60s and 50s and 60s and later, it was an effort to say, how do we make sure we get rid of diseases that people should not be getting? And so I think it's important that we continue that. We continue to make sure that kids and adults are not getting diseases that should just be going away, particularly like polio and things like that. So, you know, what this bill is going to do is to have more information. More information is always better. And that way everyone can make sure that they have all the information, they're making some good decisions to make sure that their kids are protected in schools and the community, but also later in life. So I urge an aye vote on this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Joshi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I rise in opposition of this bill. I'm not against the vaccinations. I have given it throughout my practice. But the real issue here is issue of choice. We want to give the parents the choice, whatever they believe in it, whatever they want to decide about their children. And that's what really matters here. I also am not very sure that physicians just will go ahead and just sign a little certificate, because there is a liability involved. If they were either giving the vaccination or not giving the vaccination, either way, they have significant medical liability here either. The other problem is the citizens who do not believe in vaccination, the parents, and then we are telling them to go to the government webpage and then telling them to review these information. They will never do that because they know this is a government-sponsored program, and in the first place, they never trusted it. Also, vaccines work both ways. Just to give you a little idea about what we were given in the committee, not all of you have seen this piece of paper, but it says that in 1940, we only gave DTP and smallpox. By 1980, the kids were receiving significant number of shots, and in 2012, by the age of 6, they received 49 doses of 14 different vaccines. Let me tell you, I never received a single one of these vaccines, which was given in 2012. I'm still around. And I received one of these, which was being proposed in 1940, which most of you don't have it in this room, and that's smallpox. I got it, but I didn't get anything else. So, I mean, medical science is good, and as I said, the vaccines are good, but we have to give the choice to our parents and whatever they believe in it. And again, if you believe in parental choice and less intrusion and less rules, there was an interesting line on the bill summary that struck me. It reads, "The bill also requires the department to promulgate rules concerning student immunization." Members, we have been talking here every day about rules. All the rules and regulations we are imposing on our citizens as well as on our businesses. We need to do less. We don't need to do more. Every year, over 10,000 pages of rules are issued by different departments here. So if you are against the rules, then this bill is not a good bill because it's going to issue more rules. So with that, I propose the amendment L008 and ask it to be displayed.
L008 is now properly before us. Representative Joshi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, what this amendment says is if any of the rules are issued because of this bill, we should take the responsibility. We should approve that. We should not just delegate that to the departments or the bureaucrats or state officials. Because when the problem comes, and all these parents will complain, we always blame the bureaucrats. No, we should take the blame if we vote on the bill. So I ask for a yes vote on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion? There is. Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and appreciate where Representative Joshi's trying to get to, but essentially this is an unprecedented I'm not even sure it's actually constitutional or legal under the Administrative Procedures Act because the State Board of Health is a separate independent body that's appointed, made up of experts and doctors and folks who are much better versed on these issues than, no offense to my friends on the Health Committee, but this is an inappropriate delegation of power, and I'd ask for a no vote.
Representative Joshi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Pabon. I realize this maybe we are breaking a new ground, and I think it's always good because if we start something new, we have done it many times. We have seen many bills that have passed. But again, on top of that, the real issue is when they pass the rules, and if it goes to the committee, the parents will again have a chance to come and testify in the committee why the rules are bad. So this gives our citizens another chance to say something about the rules before they become effective. Right now, the rules are already passed, and then we start to hear the complaints from the citizens, and usually nothing is done at that point. So I think this is a good amendment, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on L008? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L008. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. L008 is lost. Back to the bill. Representative Humphrey.
All right, let's try this again. I got the correct amendment this time. I request that L006, I move L006, request that it be properly displayed. Members, basically what this...
L006 is properly displayed. Representative Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, what this amendment basically does is it says that those who want to elect an opt-out of the vaccination are treated the same as those who consent to the vaccination in terms of the education that's provided, that everybody gets the same information up front, that we're not singling out those who elect to exempt their child. And it's just an equity issue, and I believe it's a good amendment.
Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, appreciate the idea behind this, but it's an unnecessary amendment for lots of different reasons. One, those who are getting vaccinations for their children are actually provided a laundry list of information about the risks and benefits of vaccinations. This is from my doctor, my pediatrician, for my 15-month-old son, and the information we collected over the course of his vaccination schedule, providing us information about the side effects and the implications of vaccinations. It's simply unnecessary. So if you look at this packet of information, again, this is from my doctor in Boulder, Colorado, my pediatrician, and if they're doing it, I think it's a practice that is already in best practices in the medical community. There's ethical obligations associated with disclosures, and so I'd ask for a no vote on L06.
Representative Joshi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a good amendment because even if you go to a doctor or your clergy, you may not get the same information. I think if we are going to give the information to parents on a module on this our CDPHE webpage, then everybody should receive the same information so that they can make their decisions appropriately. So I think we should be treating everybody with the same knowledge, and I ask for I vote on this amendment.
Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also rise in support of this amendment. Everybody should receive the same information, and there are dangers, again, like you said, to vaccination. And one thing that folks may consider, too, is since there has been a link to mitochondrial disorders, and there is a certain subset of the population that does have these disorders, and it could lead to autism if vaccinated, it would stand to reason that, if you have a family that has some history of autism, those folks may rightfully decide, I'm not going to take the risk of vaccination. And so, but folks that aren't aware of this phenomenon probably also ought to receive this information. So I am a yes vote on the amendment.
Is there any further discussion on L006? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L006. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. L006 is lost. To the bill. Representative Joshi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are some other issues also involved with this bill. I think we are barking at the wrong tree here, because if you really want to increase the vaccination rate, the biggest thing that we can do is to help our doctors. We are not giving them enough reimbursement, so doctors do not keep the vaccines in their offices. Also, last year, and I don't know, Representative Pabon, you voted for the bill or not, but there was a bill passed here to make the doctors two separate drawers, one for the Medicaid patients and one for their regular patients. This is just increasing more and more regulations and making vaccination process cumbersome. If we really want to increase our vaccination rate, then this is what we should be doing. This is the best way to help. Because when a doctor sends the patients to the health department, many of them never go there, because either it's too far away or it's in a different town, and so on and so forth. So I think that this is not the right way to do it. I think we should help our doctors first. Thank you.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1288? Representative Everett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L013. And ask to be displayed.
L013 is now displayed. Representative Everett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So basically, if we have any students or parents that don't comply with what we may pass today, I think that since we look and we want to make sure that all students get a quality education and uniform education in the state, when parents try to exercise their rights here and not comply, I think that the funding should follow the student to whatever school of choice that they want. So what this does to make sure that all these students get this quality education and actually get the funding that they should have and deserve, I believe this is a great amendment. Please vote yes.
Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to understand the premise of the amendment, but there's a couple of things with respect to immunizations that already exist in current law. If a child is unable to provide their immunization records and still does not choose an exemption on personal belief, medical, or religious, then they would be precluded from enrolling into a school unless and until they got those vaccinations or exercised an exemption. So as a practical matter, non-compliance means the kid just doesn't go to school. And as we already did, we exempted homeschool and online school. So there's that option. That wouldn't cover this. So the amendment's practical effect is nothing, I think, because you either go to school and you comply with the exemption or the vaccinations, or you go to a homeschool or an online school, or I suppose if you decided not to go to do neither of those, you could never enroll into another institution where the money would follow, if that makes sense. So the reason I'm struggling with this is because I'm not sure practically that you would ever have this scenario. So maybe I can understand more about the amendment, but I'd ask for a no vote because it just doesn't, the practical implications of this don't make sense. I'm trying to come to a logical conclusion and I can't.
Representative Everett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Assistant Majority Leader. These parents that may not fall underneath all these rules that we're putting forward are still taxpayers, and they still should be entitled to a certain amount that they do pay into the system for their children to get an education. If they choose on whether it's a religious exemption or what have you, if they choose not to comply with what we're doing here, they should be able to take that money and do with it what they want to help educate the kids, whether it's a homeschool or what have you. So I just think it's a funding equity issue.
Is there any further discussion on L013? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L013. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. L013 is lost. To the bill. Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Pabon, I appreciate you having this bill come forward so we can at least have a conversation about this. I'm a parent. I've got kids, and all of my kids have been immunized. I've got them all their shots, I guess, and they're all good to go. But I also have a brother who's significantly younger than me. He's got soon to be three young kids as well, and they do not believe in immunization. They don't do it. And basically what this bill does is the sponsor is basically saying that my brother's an idiot. My brother's a moron. He doesn't know what he's talking about when he does that. And somehow the sponsor of this bill somehow knows more than my brother and said, you know what? You're not smart enough to make this decision on your own. So you're going to have to go and get a doctor's note. You'll have to go and pay your copay or whatever to get your doctor's note, or you'll have to go online and take some kind of a class because you're not smart enough to make this decision on your own. That's exactly what this bill does. You can spin it any other way you'd like, But this basically says parents of Colorado that choose to not get immunization for your kids, you're too stupid to make this decision on your own. Now, I guess that kind of goes to show par for the course with legislation coming through this year, but I won't speak about that because we're talking about 1288. But 1288 is another bill where the sponsor says, citizen, parent, you don't know what you're doing. You're dumb. Those of us sitting in this chamber are a lot smarter than you, and you can't make this decision on your own. That is the only thing that this bill does. You can try to say it, spin it any other way you'd like, but that is 100% what this bill does. I urge a no vote. I say we stand up to allow parents to say that we think you are smart enough to make that decision on your own, and if you choose to make that decision, that's your personal right as a parent to make that decision. This bill is, I'm not here to say immunization isn't good or bad or whatever. I've chose it, but I support the right of other parents to make that decision on their own. So with that, I urge a no vote on 1288.
Representative Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I first of all want to thank the bill sponsor for this bill, House Bill 1288. It's a good bill. I had the opportunity to be in committee when this bill was presented, and we heard some fascinating testimony. And I'd like to sum it up in a couple of words. Basically, this bill is all about public health and individual rights. It does both. It protects our children, and it also preserves the right of parents. We heard just a few minutes ago about parents may not know, and they need to go online about some kind of awareness education. This is good because basically what it does is it provides information. It's going to inform parents. It's going to give them the information that they need because it's also about what goes on in our schools and making sure that we have a balance that way. This passed out of committee on a 9-2 vote. It's very thoughtful legislation. You heard Representative Pabon talk about the stakeholder groups. Over 25 different organizations came together over the summer to make sure that we were putting together some thoughtful legislation regarding this issue. What we heard in committee is that there's an increased number of kids who are attending school that have not been immunized. And that does create a health risk and a health concern for our kids. So this is a good bill, and I urge you to vote yes.
Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I'm going to urge a no vote on this bill. We just heard about parents' right and need to know. Well, that is very important. I'm going to, again, say that there is a certain subset of the population that maybe we should also educate everyone on the risks of immunization as well. I would like to, again, revisit the Hannah Polling case and give you a quote from her father, who is a doctor who had a PhD in biophysics. And he said, "My daughter's case raises more questions than it answers." And while he believes in the importance of vaccination, he said vaccines are one of the most important advances in the history of medicine, but people need to know there is a risk to every medicine. And his daughter became autistic after a vaccination. This is his statement. There may be a small percentage of people who are susceptible to injury. So this bill does not provide that. And as far as the need to know, I take exception from some of the stakeholders here because I have a letter saying that bemoaning the fact that this was required to state the statutory reference allowing parents to opt out of vaccinations. I understand that the intent of the bill is benevolent. However, forcing parents that may know more than we do about the risks of vaccination to view a module, and most of them do. Most of the ones I've talked to know exactly the choice that they're making based on medical science. So I urge a no vote on this bill. I understand the intent. I applaud Representative Pabon for working so hard on this and bringing this forward. However, I will urge a no vote.
Representative Labuda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I'm older than a lot of you who sit in this chamber, and I remember some times before you were born. I was vaccinated with the smallpox vaccination when I was a very small child. I have the scar to show for it still. As a result of smallpox vaccinations, and smallpox is a terrible disease, smallpox has now been eradicated from the earth. I was born in the late 40s, so I was alive when polio was spreading throughout the nation. I remember being kept in the house, not being able to play with my neighbor kids because my parents were so afraid of what might happen. And when Dr. Salk developed that vaccine, and I was given a polio vaccine, and at that time it was a cube of sugar that didn't taste very sugary because of what was on it, I said, hooray. It took care of the polio scare, and I was able to go out and play with kids again. Folks, there will always be a very, very small percentage of children who react adversely to these vaccinations. But when I look at the number of lives that have been saved, at the number of disfigurements that have been prevented, I urge an aye vote on House Bill 1288. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1288? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1288. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. House Bill 1288 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, can you please read the title for Senate Bill 54?
Senate Bill 54 by Senator Balmer, also Representative Pabon, concerning the ability of an alcohol beverage licensee to petition the licensing authority to pay a fine in lieu of a license suspension ordered by the licensing authority.
Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I move Senate Bill 54 and the Finance Committee report.
To the committee report, Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee report, we did deal with a technical amendment to the bill that did away with the 2-year suspension revocation provision, and so that was the good work of the Finance Committee. Ask for an aye vote on the committee report.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is a bill that came out of the Senate, I believe 35-0, came out of Business and Finance unanimously. This bill simply gives discretion to the local and state licensing authority to implement a fine in lieu of suspension if they deem it's appropriate. It's fully within their discretion. There's no requirement or mandate. And ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 54? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 54. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Senate Bill 54 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, can you please read the title of Senate Bill 28?
Senate Bill 28 by Senator Jones, also Representatives Duran and Tyler, concerning expansion of eligibility for the receipt of disbursements from the electric vehicle grant fund for the installation of electric vehicle charging stations.
Representative Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I commend to you Senate Bill 28. This expands the capacity.
Representative Tyler, could you make a motion?
I move Senate Bill 28. Thank you.
And if there's no committee report, we'll be to the bill. Representative Tyler, to the bill.
To the bill, thank you. What this bill does is very simply provide the opportunity for private sector and universities to receive grants from the program that we set up last year. This is funded currently with some federal funding, but will be funded in the future from a sticker that goes on electric and propane alternative fuel vehicles that will $20 sticker will go to this fund for helping build out the infrastructure for those same vehicles. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 28? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 28. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. Senate Bill 28 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, can you please read the title of Senate Bill 131?
Senate Bill 131 by Senator King, also Representative Wright, concerning the removal of certain identifying information from motor vehicle registration card.
Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I move Senate Bill 131, and there is no committee report.
To the bill, Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 131, what we're attempting to do here, members, is to protect folks that drive motor vehicles in the state of Colorado from the potential of fraud. What we've seen around the state and indeed nationally on the rise is thieves will break into your car. And there are instances, in fact, in my career as a police officer in the past, I saw instances where the only thing missing from the vehicle was your vehicle registration card. The reason that these are being stolen is because currently they have your address, your residential address, printed on the front, and then on the back you're required to sign the card with your signature. And most folks, of course, use the same signature that they use on all of their legal documents. If an individual that wants to do you harm or steal your identification gets a hold of either one of those pieces of information, they have the ability to forge your signature on legal documents and also to find where you're living and potentially go to your home and then burglarize your home because they know there's a good chance you're not home if they have broken into your car in a parking lot somewhere else. So we're attempting to protect citizens in Colorado from having these forms of ID stolen. Members, you'll remember last session we passed a bill that allows insurance companies to give you digital access on your smartphone to your insurance cards. That was for the reason of not having to have those insurance cards in your vehicle anymore that has that information on it. And this is a step moving further in that direction to protect you from fraud. So I would request an aye vote on the bill. And also, I have an amendment that was requested. I apologize. Stand by.
Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize for that. Apparently, the amendment had an error on it, so we've redrafted the amendment. I move L005 and ask that it be displayed on the screen.
L005 is displayed. Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, what this amendment does, I heard from Colorado State Patrol, and they did point out that they would prefer, in order to be able to properly perform their duties in the state, that commercial vehicles in their entirety be exempted from this new requirement, so that commercial drivers would still be required to have their address printed on the front and a signature required on the back. Their justification for this is that many times in the state, they're in areas where they may not even have radio access or access to dispatch, and the only way that they can verify that address, specifically with commercial drivers oftentimes, is with the registration card. That's the justification for L005, and I would ask for an aye vote.
Well, the committee will be in a brief recess. The committee will come back to order. Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I move Amendment L005 and ask that it be displayed on the screen.
It is displayed. Representative Wright, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe I've explained the amendment and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on L005? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L005. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. L005 is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over Senate Bill 131 until Monday.
Seeing no objection, Senate Bill 131 will be laid over until Monday as amended. As amended?
Yes, thank you.
The Senate Bill 131 will be laid over until Monday as amended. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
Seeing no objection, the committee will now rise and report.
The House will come back to order. Mr. Kohler, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Speaker, Committee of the Whole begs leave reporters in consideration following attached bills being second reading thereof and makes following recommendations thereon. House Bills 1288 amended, passed on second reading in order, gross placed on the counter for third and final passage. Senate Bills 28 and 54 amended, passed on second reading in order, revised, placed on the counter for third and final passage. Senate Bill 131 amended, laid over until March 24, 2014, retaining its place on the calendar.
Representative Foote.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House adopt the report of the Committee of the Whole.
You've heard the motion very succinctly. There are no amendments at the desk. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. But you kind of confused me. You said it correctly and quickly. I was like, I'll try to mess up next time. Yeah, exactly. Representatives Quorum, Kraft-Tharp, Pabon, Swam, and... I didn't say it, did I? I just said and then you pressed it. It's amazing the power I have. Close the... Representative Scott. Close the machine with 61 aye votes, 0 no votes, 4 excused, and 0 absent. The report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Representative Court.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't think they're here yet, but we do have a group of students from Steele Elementary School who are in my district. So on behalf of their future arrival, let's congratulate them for coming to the Capitol. Thank you.
Madam Majority Leader. Members, you might want to pay attention to this announcement. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I would like to just go over the schedule for next week for your benefit. As you know, we will be spending most of the week on the long bill, the budget bill for 2014. Let me just go over this briefly. Your leadership knows what the schedule is. Monday, we will be introducing the long appropriations bill. And we will start at 10 a.m. as usual, and committees will run as usual that day. It's just simply introduction. On Tuesday, the Appropriations Committee will meet at 7:30 a.m. and we plan to start at the regular time at 9 a.m. and committees will meet as scheduled. Then on Wednesday, the House will convene at 9, and we will break into our separate caucuses to discuss the long bill and the accompanying bills. And then 4 p.m., at 4 p.m., amendments are due to the long bill, so keep that in mind. And those amendments go through the Joint Budget Committee offices, so please remember that as well. Then on Thursday, the House will convene again at 9 a.m. We will break into caucuses that morning to consider amendments. My understanding is that we will have a brief break for lunch. Lunch will not be provided by your caucus. And then we will have, I suspect, a fairly long session on Thursday starting early afternoon and going until we get the long bill passed on second reading. Friday will be third reading on the long bill. So that's the schedule.
Thank you, Madam Majority. Further announcements and introductions. Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is kind of a little bit related, but just keep in mind that Wednesday, the 26th, is Ag Day at the Capitol. And what Ag Day has become recently, which I think is really a great idea, is that celebrity chefs are coming in and teaming up with legislators to fix specialty dishes representing all the different ag commodity groups in Colorado with using Colorado produce and different commodities. And they are going to feed 500 people down on the first floor during Ag Day celebrations. And that's, I think, part of the reason why perhaps the caucuses may not be providing us with lunch, because or maybe they will. I don't know what the plan is. But anyway, there will be lots of food available during the Ag Day celebration, and I think it'll be a wonderful celebration of Colorado agriculture and all the different commodities that we produce here in the state. So just keep that in mind, and I'll make a further announcement about that next week.
Further, Representative Court and Conti, Madam Caucus Chairs.
Yeah. Hey, you know, I think that's a great idea, Representative Fisher. Let's save our caucus funds and everybody eat our wonderful Colorado food. I think that will work very well. And so on Wednesday, instead of previously planned, we will have everybody break, get your lunch, and then come back down. That's, I think, what our side will do.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We will be doing the same, getting lunch on the first floor and then returning back down to room 111. So thank you, Republican members.
And thank you, Representative Fisher.
And thank you to our wonderful Ag Coalition for providing lunch for everyone on Wednesday.
Representative Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the Judiciary Committee, in addition to the calendar for Tuesday coming up next week, will be Senate Bill 123 from Kagan. Senate Bill 123 on Tuesday.
Seeing no further announcements or introductions, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until 1 p.m. this afternoon, at which point we will adjourn until 10 a.m. Monday morning.
Seeing no objection, members have a great weekend. We'll see you back Monday. The House will stand in recess till 1 p.m.